What if I told you that the clothes medieval peasant women wore weren't just about fashion, they were about survival? Today, we're stepping back in time to uncover what these women wore, why they wore it, and how their clothing tells the story of their resilience. Ready to dive into the wardrobe of a medieval peasant woman? Let's go! The year is 1350 and you're not a queen or a noblewoman, you're a peasant woman. Your day is about to begin and the first thing you do is reach for your clothes. But what exactly are you wearing? Is it comfortable? Is it practical? And what does your clothing say about who you are and the life you live? Today, we're stepping back in time to uncover the fascinating details of what medieval peasant women wore. We'll explore the fabrics they used, the styles they adopted, and the accessories that completed their outfits. But this isn't just a lesson in fashion, it's a window into their daily lives, their struggles, and their resilience. By understanding their clothing, we'll gain a deeper appreciation for who they were and how they lived. You might be wondering, why does this matter? Well, clothing is more than just fabric, it's a reflection of identity, culture, and survival. For medieval peasant women, their attire wasn't about luxury or status. It was about practicality, resourcefulness, and making the most of what they had. By learning about their clothing, we're not just studying history, we're connecting with the stories of real women who lived, worked, and thrived in a world very different from our own. The basics. What did peasant women wear? Let's start with the basics. Forget fancy gowns and frills. Medieval peasant women's fashion was all about survival. Think of it as the ultimate workwear collection. So, what did they actually wear? Let's break it down. Their wardrobe was simple, practical, and designed for one thing: survival. 1. The smock chemise, the foundation of their wardrobe. Every outfit starts with a base layer, and for peasant women, that was the smock or chemise. Think of it as the medieval version of your favorite comfy t-shirt, something you'd wear every single day, whether you're working in the fields or cooking over a fire. Made mostly from linen, this lightweight garment was like a long, loose shirt that reached down to their ankles. It was breathable, easy to wash, and perfect for keeping them cool during long hours of work. Think of it as the medieval version of a comfortable t-shirt, something you'd wear every single day. Why it matters. The smock wasn't just about comfort, it was also about hygiene. Linen was easy to clean, which was crucial in a time when washing clothes wasn't as simple as tossing them into a machine. 2. The kirtle or dress, the everyday outfit. Over the smock, peasant women wore a kirtle, a simple, practical dress. Forget the ball gowns you see in movies. This was the medieval equivalent of a work uniform. It was all about functionality, not fashion. Unlike the elaborate gowns of noblewomen, the kirtle was plain and sturdy, often made from wool or rough linen. It was fitted at the top and flared out at the bottom, allowing for ease of movement. Whether they were working in the fields, cooking over a fire, or tending to animals, the kirtle was their go-to outfit. Why it matters. The kirtle wasn't just clothing, it was a tool. Its design allowed women to move freely and work efficiently, which was essential for their survival. This wasn't fashion for the sake of fashion. This was fashion for function. 3. The apron. A protective layer. Now let's talk about the apron. If you've ever worn an apron while cooking or cleaning, you'll get it. But for peasant women, aprons weren't just for keeping flour off their clothes, they were their armor against the mess of daily life. Think of it as their medieval version of a hazmat suit. For peasant women, the apron was a must-have. Made from wool or linen, it protected their kirtle from dirt, stains, and wear. Whether they were kneading dough, gathering firewood, or working in the fields, the apron was their shield against the mess of daily life. Why it matters. The apron wasn't just practical, it was also a symbol of their hard work. It showed that these women weren't sitting around in fancy clothes. They were rolling up their sleeves and getting things done. 4. Head coverings, wimples, veils, and coifs. Finally, let's talk about head coverings. Peasant women almost always covered their hair not just for modesty, but to keep it clean and lice-free. Imagine trying to work in the fields with your hair down in the Middle Ages, yikes. Head coverings like wimples, veils, or coifs kept their hair clean and out of the way while they worked. These weren't just accessories, they were necessities. In a time when personal hygiene was a challenge, keeping hair covered helped prevent lice and other issues. Why it matters. Head coverings were also about modesty and social norms. In medieval society, a woman's hair was often seen as something private, and covering it was a sign of respectability. Why simplicity? So, why were peasant women's clothes so simple? The answer is straightforward. They didn't have the luxury of choice. Their clothing wasn't about making a fashion statement, it was about survival. Every piece of fabric, every stitch, had to serve a purpose. Whether it was the linen smock that kept them cool, the wool kirtle that kept them warm, or the apron that protected their clothes, every item was designed to help them get through their demanding daily lives. Imagine a peasant woman waking up at dawn, putting on her smock, kirtle, and apron, and tying her hair under a coif. She wasn't dressing to impress, she was dressing to work, to provide, and to survive. Her clothing was a reflection of her resilience and resourcefulness. Fabrics and materials. What were their clothes made of? What if I told you that the clothes medieval peasant women wore were less about fashion and more about survival? Forget fast fashion. This was survival fashion. Let's dive into the fabrics and materials that made their lives possible. Let's dive into the fabrics and materials that made up their everyday lives. 1. Linen, the breathable base layer. Let's start with linen, the most common fabric for peasant women's undergarments. Linen is lightweight, breathable, and easy to wash, perfect for the smock or chemise they wore closest to their skin. Made from the flax plant, linen was a staple in their wardrobe because it kept them cool during long hours of work and could withstand frequent washing. Imagine wearing something soft and airy, even on the hottest days in the fields that was linen for them. Why it matters. Linen wasn't just comfortable, it was practical. In a time without modern washing machines, having clothes that were easy to clean was a game changer. It also lasted a long time, which was crucial for women who couldn't afford to replace their garments often. 2. Wool, the warm and durable outer layer. Next up is wool, the fabric that kept peasant women warm during cold winters. Wool was durable, thick, and perfect for outer layers like kirtles and cloaks. It was often spun and woven at home, meaning many women were involved in creating their own clothing. Picture a peasant woman spinning wool by the fire, turning raw fleece into the very fabric she'd wear to work in the fields the next day. Her clothing wasn't just something she bought, it was something she made. Why it matters. Wool wasn't just about warmth, it was about self-sufficiency. Many peasant women were skilled in spinning and weaving, and creating their own clothes was a way to save money and take pride in their work. 3. Hemp and flax, affordable and practical. For everyday clothing, peasant women also used hemp and flax. These fabrics were cheaper than linen and wool, making them a practical choice for families with limited resources. Hemp in particular was strong and durable, ideal for heavy workwear. While it wasn't as soft as linen, it got the job done, and that's what mattered most. Why it matters. Hemp and flax show us how resourceful peasant women had to be. They didn't have the luxury of choosing the softest or most luxurious fabrics. They used what was available and affordable. 4. Dyeing and colors, muted tones for a hard-working life. Now let's talk about colors. While noble women flaunted bright, expensive dyes like deep reds and purples, peasant women's clothing was often undyed or in muted tones like brown, gray, or green. These colors were cheaper to produce and practical for their labor-intensive lives. After all, why wear a bright white dress if you're going to be knee-deep in mud by noon? Why it matters. The colors of their clothing weren't just about aesthetics, they were about practicality. Muted tones hid dirt and stains, making them ideal for women who worked hard every day. Imagine a peasant woman sitting by the fire at the end of a long day, spinning wool into thread. She knows that this thread will become the fabric for her family's clothes, clothes that will keep them warm, dry, and protected. Her hands are calloused from work, but there's pride in what she creates. Her clothing isn't just fabric, it's a testament to her resilience and resourcefulness. Accessories and practical additions. When we think of accessories, we imagine shiny jewelry or stylish handbags. But for medieval peasant women, accessories were all about function, not fashion. Think belts that doubled as toolkits and shoes that were more survival gear than statement piece. But for medieval peasant women, accessories weren't about fashion, they were about function. Let's explore the belts, footwear, and even the rare pieces of jewelry that played a crucial role in their daily lives. 1. Belts and pouches, The medieval multi-tool. First up, belts. For peasant women, a belt wasn't just something to hold up their dress, it was a multi-tool. Belts were used to carry pouches, tools, and even keys. Imagine a woman working in the fields, her belt holding a small pouch with seeds or a knife for cutting herbs. It wasn't just an accessory, it was a necessity. Why it matters. Belts were a symbol of practicality. They allowed women to keep their hands free while carrying everything they needed for their work. In a world without pockets, the belt was their ultimate utility tool. 2. Footwear. Simple and functional. Now let's talk about footwear. While leather shoes or simple boots were common, many peasant women went barefoot to save money. Shoes were a luxury, and for women who spent most of their time working outdoors, going barefoot was often the more practical choice. When they did wear shoes, they were sturdy and plain, designed to withstand rough terrain and long hours of work. Why it matters. Footwear tells us a lot about their lives. For peasant women, comfort and durability were more important than style. Their shoes, or lack thereof, were a reflection of their hard-working, no-frills lifestyle. 3. Jewelry. Rare but meaningful. Jewelry was rare for peasant women, but when they did have it, it was deeply meaningful. Simple brooches, rings, or necklaces were often passed down through generations. These pieces weren't just decorations, they were connections to their family's history. Picture a young peasant girl receiving her mother's brooch. It might not be made of gold or gems, but to her, it's priceless. Why it matters. Jewelry wasn't about showing off wealth, it was about preserving memories and honoring loved ones. For peasant women, even the simplest piece of jewelry could hold immense sentimental value. Imagine a young girl sitting by the hearth, her mother handing her a small brooch. It's not fancy, but it's been in the family for as long as anyone can remember. As she holds it, she feels a connection to her grandmother, her great-grandmother, and all the women who came before her. That brooch isn't just a piece of metal, it's a piece of her history, seasonal changes and regional variations. What if I told you that medieval peasant women's wardrobes were like the original capsule collections? Their clothing changed with the seasons and the landscape, adapting to everything from icy winters to sunny fields. Let's explore how they did it. From the icy winters of northern Europe to the sunny fields of Italy, their clothing adapted to both the weather and their surroundings. Let's explore how their outfits varied across seasons and regions. First, winter versus summer clothing, adapting to the seasons. In winter, staying warm was a matter of survival. Peasant women relied on layers of wool to protect themselves from the biting cold. Think thick kirtles, heavy cloaks, and even extra smocks for insulation. Wool was their best friend. It trapped heat and kept them warm during the long hours of work in the snow or frost. But when summer arrived, their wardrobe shifted. Lighter linen garments replaced the heavy wool layers. Linen was breathable and kept them cool under the hot sun. Imagine a peasant woman working in the fields, her linen smock and kirtle allowing her to move freely without overheating. Seasonal changes weren't just about comfort, they were about survival. Why it matters. Their ability to adapt their clothing to the seasons shows just how resourceful they were. They didn't have the luxury of modern heating or air conditioning. They relied on their clothing to keep them comfortable year-round. Regional differences. Clothing across Europe. Now let's talk about regional differences. A peasant woman in England might wear a slightly different style than one in France or Italy. In colder regions like England or Germany, clothing was heavier and more layered, with a focus on warmth. Wool was the go-to fabric, and cloaks were essential for braving the chilly winds. In contrast, a peasant woman in sunny Italy or southern France might wear lighter, looser garments. Linen was more common here, and the styles were often simpler and more breathable. The warmer climate meant less need for heavy layers, and the clothing reflected that. Why it matters. These regional differences weren't just about fashion, they were about practicality. Peasant women wore what worked best for their environment, whether that meant bundling up in wool or staying cool in linen. Picture this. In a small village in northern England, a peasant woman bundles up in layers of wool, her breath visible in the frosty air as she tends to her animals. Meanwhile, in a sun-drenched Italian village, another woman works in her linen dress, the lightweight fabric fluttering in the warm breeze. Two women, two very different wardrobes, but both perfectly suited to their lives and surroundings. The social significance of clothing. What if I told you that the clothes medieval peasant women wore weren't just about warmth or looks, they were about identity, status, and even the law? Forget dressing to impress. This was dressing to survive and sometimes just to stay out of trouble. Let's uncover how clothing shaped their place in society and what it meant to dress according to your station. 1. Clothing as identity. More than just fabric. For medieval peasant women, clothing wasn't just practical, it was a reflection of who they were. Their simple smocks, kirtles, and aprons told the world they were hard-working, resourceful, and part of the lower class. Unlike noble women who wore elaborate gowns to showcase their wealth, peasant women's clothing was a symbol of their humility and their role in the community. But it wasn't just about what they wore, it was about what they couldn't wear. In a society where your clothes defined your place, dressing above your station could lead to trouble. A peasant woman's clothing wasn't just fabric, it was her identity. Why it matters. Understanding this helps us see how deeply clothing was tied to social hierarchy. For peasant women, their attire wasn't just a choice, it was a statement about their place in the world. Second, sumptuary laws, the rules of dressing. In some places, there were even laws dictating what peasants could and couldn't wear. These were called sumptuary laws, and they were designed to keep everyone in their proper place. For example, bright colors, expensive fabrics, and certain styles were reserved for the nobility. A peasant woman caught wearing a bright red dress or silk could face fines or even punishment. Imagine a young peasant woman dreaming of wearing a beautiful red dress, only to be reminded by the law that such luxuries weren't for her. These laws weren't just about fashion, they were about control. Why it matters. Sumptuary laws show us how clothing was used to enforce social order. For peasant women, this meant their dreams of dressing above their station were often out of reach. Picture this. A peasant woman stands in the marketplace, her eyes lingering on a bolt of bright red fabric. For a moment, she imagines herself in a beautiful dress, turning heads as she walks through the village. But then reality sets in. She knows the law forbids her from wearing such a color, it's reserved for the nobility. With a sigh, she turns away, her dreams of red fabric fading as quickly as they appeared. As we wrap up, let's take a moment to appreciate the incredible resilience of medieval peasant women. Their clothing wasn't just fabric, it was a testament to their strength and resourcefulness. So, the next time you throw on your favorite pair of jeans or a cozy sweater, remember, you're carrying on a tradition of practicality that dates back centuries. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more historical deep dives. Let me know in the comments what surprised you most about medieval peasant women's clothing. Their resourcefulness? Their adaptability? I'd love to hear your thoughts. From simple smocks to practical aprons, their clothing was more than just fabric, it was a testament to their strength and resourcefulness. Every stitch was designed to help them survive and thrive in a demanding world. Their clothes weren't about luxury, they were about hard work, humility, and practicality. Today, their legacy lives on in our wardrobes. Think about your favorite pair of jeans or that cozy sweater you love. Like peasant women, we choose clothing that's comfortable, durable, and suited to our lives. Their spirit of practicality still shapes how we dress. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more historical deep dives. Let me know in the comments what surprised you most about medieval peasant women's clothing, their resourcefulness, their adaptability. I'd love to hear your thoughts.